Hello guys and welcome to the MSC Performance Podcast. This is season 4, episode 10 with myself, Luke, and I am joined by our new coach, Max. Hello, Max.
Hello, nice to be here.
So similar to our last podcast, guys, where we introduced Kitty, we're going to introduce Max so you get to know a little bit more about the person behind the coach. We'll talk a little bit about his background, his own training, what he's currently doing. And then to finish up with, we're going to have a bit of a Q&A, so something for everyone, hopefully, from this episode. We have 5 questions that we're going to be running through, which we'll get to in a while. But first off, Max, you want to introduce yourself, tell everyone what you've been doing the last few months, and let them get to know you.
Yeah, so hello, my name is Max. Thrilled to be joining the MSC family. I've had a very busy past few months. I've just come off traveling to Bali, which was amazing. I'm sure I'll talk about that a little bit more later. But in regards to myself, I've just always been within sports performance and that kind of thing since I was about 16, just been in professional sport. I've always trained from a very young age. I then got a sports scholarship to go to Nottingham-Trent Uni to study sports science and play rugby while I was there at the top university league. And then I got all my PT qualifications, all that kind of stuff. And then I've started getting to the S&C world once I graduated, which was in 2019. And then, since that, I've played more rugby. I went down to Canterbury, played there for a season. And then I came back to the mighty Birmingham, and then here we are today.
Joined at the Bourneville Massive.
Yeah.
So now you're currently playing at Bourneville, and you also do a little bit of coaching with some other teams. Do you want to tell people about who you're currently working with?
Yeah, so I coach rugby at Uni of Birmingham. I did that last year for the rugby team. Then I've done a little bit of S&C with a couple of the Bourneville lads, so the under 16, so from 12 to 16, that kind of age group. So I've been getting in and about with the S&C in that, and then I want to get involved in a few more teams, hopefully come this year.
So would you say that your main passion kind of leading up to this point has been mainly like in that team environment?
Yeah, I think I like to have a bit of a vary because I like being individualised and talking to people one-on-one, and then when I get into a team environment, it's quite nice talking to a group of people and actually getting into everyone and getting that kind of banter.
Camaraderie.
Yeah, it's a lot nicer. But then it's nice to talk to everyone one-on-one and get into people's technique that way.
Aside from those that you've just said, I guess my next question was going to be like, what do you find is the main differences of working on a one-on-one basis with someone comparatively to working in that team? Obviously, there's pros and cons to both. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your experience of that, like the benefit of being in that team environment versus the benefit of the one-on-one approach?
When you're with a team, you've obviously got to, you can't give more, you've got to give information that's going to suit sort of everyone.
The
because,
average.
Yeah, because
the group.
You don't have enough time to go through everyone one-on-one. Whereas if you are individualized and you're talking to someone one-on-one, you can really get down to the technique. You can get to know them. You can see what kind of coaching they like in terms of how you talk to them, because some people like being screamed at, some don't, and you've got to obviously adjust based on the person. With a group, everything's generalized. You've got to give very good basic technique points, all of that, so then they're all going to pick up on that.
One thing I find is when you work in that group environment, like you've just said, is like some people respond really well to like the higher intense stuff and pushing really hard. Other people respond to more volume-based stuff. And you've got to go off the averages when you're doing the group session. So it's like the average person is going to respond to this amount of sets, and this is going to work really well. And it's harder to get that individual, which is the benefit of the individual. Yeah. But I guess with the team, you get that, like you said, that atmosphere and that extra little bit of push. And you look at the research, looking at training in group environments, or even just having a spotter and how much extra you get out of your performance. So there's nothing like the videos you see online of like rugby teams or American footballers when there's like a bunch of like 20 people screaming at each other while they do a clean. And it might not be the best clean in the world.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to say. Like, you see videos, and I've been in those kind of environments, like when you train on your own and you go a 1RM in something, unless you're very good mentally in that sense of the gym, like you're not always going to lift 100%. As much as you can. Whereas when I've been in environments when you've got 15 of your pals that you're really close with, or 20 teammates absolutely screaming at you, you're not going to drop with that bar on your back, are you? You're always going to stand up.
I have found myself in that as well. Like you come in, when you're hyped up for a session, it's fantastic. It's super easy. You train by yourself. If you're struggling on that day, you're a little bit tired, when you're by yourself, it can be tough. So
yeah, I think we've all experienced those days where
you see a lot of people that struggle for motivation to actually come to a gym, and they set up the home gym, and they're like, this is going to motivate me because it's right in my home, and then they sell the kit in 6 months because they lack that atmosphere. And
well, I had that because over lockdown I bought a load of kit just to keep myself going over lockdown, and it's brilliant because on a day where you can't be asked and you do want to get a session in, it's good to just go out into your garage. But it is that, like, it's good being in a garage because you do step out of your home environment, but you still know that you're at home. And if you want, you can just go, let's sack this off. And then you go and watch Netflix. Whereas when you actually come to a gym environment, even if you're feeling a bit down and groggy, you're here and you want to do something, or else there's no point in you coming in. So that is that really.
Decent. So then you've got the team environment in terms of the one-on-one. Like, what's the main kind of clientele that you've worked with previously?
I've had quite a variety, to be fair. So I've had people who are young. So I've had some young athletes, some little tumblers, some little athletes, which is very interesting to get into. Then I've had the middle ground, which is just like your everyday gym goer, your everyday person who does a little bit of sport but wants to like link that sport and gym in a certain way. And then I've actually had people who are near enough 80 years old and trying to get into the S&C with that, because strength and conditioning it's actually a very broad term, isn't it? Like people often think strength and conditioning is only sport athletes, whereas it can be just getting out of a chair. It's something as simple as that. So.
And I think that's one of the things that we liked when we was interviewing you for the job, is the big thing that we say at MSC is that like we want elite facilities, like high-end facilities, but that are accessible to everyone. So at the same time, you've got someone like Jazz that's getting ready for the Commonwealth, training with, like you said, some older clientele that are just looking to stay as strong and as fit and as supple as they can for as long as possible. And everyone's training in that same environment without an ego. And that's everything that we're trying to do. And I think that was one big thing that we really like, that kind of S&C for everyone.
It is that. Like, S&C is such a broad term. Like, it can be, people can use it for their sports and that, but I think it's very good to use it in that I just want to be fitter generally, or I want to be able to do X, Y, Z. I want to be able to stand up out of a chair. It can be such a broad term, and I think it's good to reinforce that with a lot of people, because the term strength and conditioning does get lost in translation, I think, a lot of the time.
And it just scares people as well.
100%,
when you're trying to convince, like you said, someone that's just maybe looking to lose a little bit of weight and just wants to feel a bit better, when you're trying to push strength and conditioning, they almost think like you're giving them something that's just way too advanced for what they're currently looking for. When actually it's fundamentals, is just like learning to train properly.
Exactly. It's just the basic mechanics of movement, isn't it? They think, when you tell them strength and conditioning, I think, I don't want to be able to jump 10 feet in the air or something like that, when it's actually just being able to move weight in a good way, isn't it, and efficiently. So
fantastic. So that's, I guess, a little bit about your coaching. What about just got that university? Do you want to tell us about kind of your studies? What kind of led you down to the passions that you've currently got?
So I did sports science at uni, absolutely loved it. Did that for 3 years. I just got that. So I was in the Worcester Academy, didn't get a contract after that. So then got this this degree over at Nottingham Trent, and it interests me just because it is quite a link between sports, rugby, gym, and they're all quite intertwined, that sports science kind of thing. And it means you can branch out in a lot of different directions once you've got that degree. So loved that for 3 years, and it got you into loads of different environments, like in a lab doing a lot of sports science stuff, and then in a gym doing that.
Because when you normally take on an SSC, it normally means that you're interested in training in the gym, and then it gets you into these other environments that you've not been part of before, like you said, the lab work and stuff. That's cool.
And just like there's so many things I actually learned that I do take into the real world now, like biomechanics of movement. We did a lot of stuff like in a biomechanics lab, which is just evaluating how people move. So we got like cricket players in, and we looked at how they do when they bowl, how they move doing that. And then you break down all of that, and then you can start implementing certain training programs with how they move, and then looking at that. So it's all really interesting stuff. Like, a lot of people think when you do sports science, it's a bit of a cop out at uni, but it's actually a lot of good science in there, and it's really, really interesting.
Fantastic. What did you do your dissertation on?
Creatine, actually.
Did you? Wicked.
On creatine.
That's cool. Mm-hmm. Well, obviously there's no research on creatine, so I'm glad that you did that to
supplement work. I basically invented it.
What did you do on creatine? What was the study?
It was just the use and effects of it, and then I just broke it all down. I didn't do any studies. It was just a what you call it, not a meta-analysis. I can't remember the word for it. I basically just looked at loads of other studies and just put it all into one. kind of thing. So I just researched it all.
Fantastic. And then with your own training now, obviously you play rugby. I guess you could tell us a little bit more about your rugby, how that looks in training, how it looks kind of off season, and then we can kind of start to link that into the Q&A, because I think one of the questions that we got is quite linked back to kind of what you're currently doing.
So personally, I've now been going a little bit more CrossFit at the moment, doing all that kind of stuff. I'm really into my Olympic lifting at the moment, so I've really been trying to break down that, especially now. So now I'm in pre-season with my rugby, I can really hammer a lot of sessions in, whereas during the season it's actually quite hard because you train Tuesday, Thursday, play on Saturday. It's quite hard to work out when to train, because Tuesday you don't really want to be knackered for a training session. Thursday you don't want to be knackered for that, and then
you're thinking about getting ready for the
game, and then you're in a game. Yeah. So it's all dependent with regards to my own training. On a Sunday, if I've recovered quite well from the game on a Saturday, I can always maybe get a session in, or like a flush or something quite light. And then Monday's always my big day, because that's the furthest time away from a game and the furthest away from the next game that I can get a big session in.
If you're slightly fatigued for that Tuesday session, like, it's not the priority of the week. So
exactly, yeah. But yeah, now it's obviously pre-season. It's the bit before pre-season, so I can get quite a bit of training in now. So I can train a lot, I can deal with the fatigue a little bit more, and actually get my body a little bit adapted, hopefully going into the season. So I might be able to still train a bit more, but because my body will be more adapted.
And that's why you went to Bali, so you can get out of all that extra training sessions.
Yeah, of course. Train loads in Bali.
So how many times are you, not during Bali, but how many times are you going to be training now per week? And kind of like, what would that weekly breakdown look like?
I think I'll try and get anywhere between 3 and 4 main sessions in, and then a couple like supplementary sessions if I can. But I think that's perfect for me, because I don't.
What does a supplementary session mean to you?
Just in terms of, so if I've had a game,
like a recovery session.
Yeah, more of a recovery kind of session, or anything I haven't done in the 3 or 4 other sessions, just get a little bit of a top up on those kind of movements.
Yeah. Perfect. And in season, 2 or 3 sessions?
Exactly the same, 2 or 3 sessions.
Fantastic. Outside of training, you've obviously been to Bali. Anywhere else you've been cool, or where are you looking to go next? Oof. Well, tell us about Bali, I guess.
Bali was incredible. It's hard to talk about places I want to go in the future now, because I feel like I've always got to top it now.
Where do you go from there?
Well, yeah, I mean, so I was there for just over 2 weeks, and it hits everything. If you want to go somewhere that hits every kind of holiday that you want, Bali is the one. You've got beaches, you've got adventures if you get bored, you've got pools, you've got chill hotels, you've got monkeys. You've got everything you want in a holiday. Really.
The big three, mate. Beaches, monkeys.
yeah, exactly. Beaches, monkeys, pools, rainforest. Yeah, it's got the lot. It was absolutely fantastic. The only problem is, as I said to you, it's just the travel.
And the water you had. The water. The old barley belly.
Oh, the barley belly is quite bad, yeah. But we all deal with that, don't we?
Yeah. What do you enjoy doing outside of the gym? Like, have you got any hobbies or other things that you enjoy doing in your spare time?
I do actually. I play a little bit of ultimate frisbee as well.
I did think, because we've just put the meet the coaches, and Jonah said we love to see it. And does he know him?
I do, but I don't do that as much as I used to, because rugby sort of has taken over. But frisbee's primarily done in the summer, which is when I have this time off anyway.
Fantastic,
so if I ever get some time off, I'll do a little bit of frisbee, something like that. Because it does actually keep me really fit, and it's it's actually a hard sport. When you think of frisbee, you think of dogs
on the beach,
all of that stuff. Yeah, but it's actually really hard.
Well, Jonah that I just said liked the post saying, "Well, we'd love to see it." He put up a post the other day, and it was incredible actually. Like, it was very, very athletic. Like, it was a really long. I mean, I don't know the terminology. A long throw. He threw it quite far, and he did a very quite aggressive dive to it was fantastic. It was pretty cool to watch.
It's good for that stuff, because when you watch things like American football, if they do a catch like that, it's absolutely incredible. They dive for it. That happens every game in frisbee, but people don't really know about it. It's a very underdeveloped sport. It's not really out there very much. Not a lot of people know about it. So hopefully it gets out there. It's been on the brink of being into the Olympics for a very long time, but it's always just pushed behind all the other sports.
Yeah. Anything else away from sport?
I don't think so.
No. Sit at home waiting to do more sport.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, gotta love a bit of sport.
Fantastic. Awesome. Yeah. Okay, cool. So that's a decent introduction to yourself. Do you want to dive into the Q&A?
Yes. So one of the questions that was put forward was...
I'll stop you there. The 4 questions we had, guys, so you can get ready to listen if you want to know, if you want to push on with it. The first question that we're going to answer is, what is a good age to start your strength training? That was from someone that we train as part of the school. So we'll get into that in a second. We got asked how often you should change your program up. And then also a question, which we're going to link in with it, is how often should I deload? So we're going to pair those in together. In opinions on the Ollie lifts for sports, they didn't be specific about the sports. We're just going to talk about team sports, which I think it was from. And then also someone in the barbell club this week asked us, why do we give some people the safety bar squat over the back squat? So we have 5 questions. We're going to answer it in 4 parts. So apologize for interrupting.
That's all right.
Crack on with the first one. What is a good age to start your strength training?
So this is quite a good topic, actually, I think. And I wanted to talk about it because it's always been a thing, hasn't it, where people say you can't start from young, it's going to stunt your growth, all of that kind of stuff. And then there's a lot of science, there's not actually a lot of science that proves that. So I think with regards to starting training, the earlier the possible with movements, in a way, don't obviously load up with ridiculous amount of weight, but if you can get into kids from a very early age and learn their movement patterns, it just means as they get older, then they're in such a good place when it comes to gym, because gym is such a good way of life. Like it adds years onto your life in the long run. So if you can get into someone early about good movement patterns, all of that, when they get older, they'll just be there and it'll just won't get injured as much, all of that kind of stuff, really.
There's 2 things off the bat that you've said there. And the first one is everyone's saying that it stunts your growth. And I think the reason for this is when you look at high-level powerlifters and high-level weightlifters, you're thinking these are really short people. Yeah. And they're short because they're very good at the lifting because they're short. They're not short because they've been doing lifting all their lives. So naturally, as you get to the elite 1%, I mean, when I get to like worlds and stuff, I'm one of the taller people in my weight category because the shorter people are naturally better at lifting. So it's in the same way that all basketballers are 6'5", 6'7". They're naturally the top 1% of the sport. In powerlifting, Mark's never going to be the best powerlifter in the world because he's 6'3", he's lanky. He's never going to be at the world's. No one's going to say, maybe it's not a myth because Mark is 6'3". Someone like myself thought, it's stunted his growth because he's 5'7". I'm 5'9". So people look at the elite level and say, it's stunted the growth. Look at all these short powerlifters, but the reason they're at the 1% is because they are short and then they naturally gravitate to that sport. Yeah. It's in the same way you look at rugby players and you say, no, I don't want to play rugby. I don't want to get that big, but it's just, if you want to be at the top percentage, that's what rugby players look like in certain positions.
Exactly. It's nothing to do with stunting your growth at a young age. And I think because I think I've seen a lot of clips in America and they've actually started getting gym and gym movements part of the syllabus in school. Because you see all those videos of them teaching good movements in schools, and that would just be perfect here.
It's amazing. And one thing I've noticed straight away is we work with a school once a week, and it's fantastic. And like you said, like I would absolutely kill for that, because aside from what you just said about it, improving your quality of life, the amount of time that you realize that you're training wrong when you're 15, 16, you just rock into the gym with your friends, you train like an idiot, you max out your bench press, you do some bicep curls, you go on, you don't realize how to train properly. And I look at these guys that are coming in that are like anywhere from years 11 to years 16, so they're like 11 to 16, and they're learning how to train, and we get them like doing trap bars, we're getting them doing some sprints and jumps, and I'm like, this is such an amazing opportunity, but they just don't realize it.
That's what I agree. It's like I would pay so much money to go back to when I was 15 or whatever, started training, and I was doing bench, bicep curls, half rep squats, the whole lot, just without knowing a thing. Whereas if someone got into me early about good patterns and all of that, it would save you in the long run, wouldn't it? Injury wise, you'd be better. But
that's the thing. You've just, like, people think when they get to the gym and they talk about the injury rates, and that's one of the things they say about not starting strength training so early. But you look at the general populations, the school that come to MSC, like the guys that are the most athletic are like the good shape, they're sprinting. The people that don't do any sport, I don't know if it's they're trying to get out of it, but they're saying, my knee hurts, I can't train today, or my back's sore. And I'm like, 13, man, like this is the time now to learn to move properly and learn how to use your body rather than sitting down all the time. And you see now that like younger and younger, they're getting these aches and pains that normally wouldn't have occurred till they're slightly older, just because of the level of inactivity. I
I agree with that. And then on top of that, obviously overall movement is very good. Like when I did a little bit of an S&C camp with some kids who were from 12 to 16 who were rugby players, they don't realise how much gym movements and good movements actually relate over to sport. So you show them, oh, this is actually a gym movement. And they go, oh, and I ask questions about, oh, how can this be used in the game? And you'd explain it to them and show it them. And they go, oh, actually, that really does make sense. It's good to load it this way. So there is actually a good takeover into the sports that you can get into kids from a young age.
It's really interesting, I think, when you look at the different demographics and what you're kind of pushing. So when I'm working with the school, like you've just said, because when you work with adults, a lot of it, when you're pushing S&C to people that don't want to train when they're like in their 20s, you're talking about injury prevention and you're talking about managing like loading better, balancing out the sport.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing that you're pushing, and they're on board with that. When you talk to kids about it, at first I was like, this is great for building, robustness, tissue tolerance, etc. No interest whatsoever. But as soon as you start saying this is an amazing movement that's going to increase your speed, your the all ears. So like when I'm coaching a school, it's very much you're doing this movement because it's going to directly transfer to your max effort sprint. So you're going to feel faster, more explosive. When it's people slightly older, I'm talking about obviously improving sport performance, but trying to manage injuries as much as you can.
Yeah. It's quite funny actually.
So what would you say is like general good recommendations for someone that's maybe got a kid or someone younger that's looking to start training? Like where would be a good place for you, do you think, to start in terms of like how many times a week, kind of full body sessions?
You don't have to go crazy at all. I think just start either 1 or 2 sessions a week, just very basic movements. Like you need nothing more than that, because if you go over the top, that's when, as we say, the injuries come. Kids will their heads will go through the roof and they'll start getting a bit panicked. If you just are very basic, 2-3 movements, that's all you need. Tell them how it relates to it. I think that's all you need for someone who's quite young.
Yeah. In my experience of working with them is they're not so much into they don't want to build strength. They want to improve their sport. They want to be powerful. And I think they need a bit more variation. And they like things to be fun. So I think whenever you put some kind of something that makes it a bit more enjoyable, rather than say you do 3 sets of 5, if you give them a bit of a challenge almost, it increases their kind of enjoyment out of it and they start to get a bit more. But like you said, I think if they're playing a sport as well, 1 or 2 sessions in the gym, full body sessions, doing some kind of sprinting and jumping, and then some full body, low load. I think the other recommendations, like you said earlier, is don't go crazy with volume, don't go crazy with the intensity. You don't want anything super close to failure, which is the general recommendations we have for general populations anyway. And just making sure there's no technique breakdown.
And as you say, it's always making it fun. You don't have to, when we say, obviously doing your reps and your volume and all of that is very important. But when you first start out with all the movements, it's always good, I think, to put it into a game kind of situation. So trying to come up with a game where the kids are going to get into those kind of positions. So then they're naturally in that. If you actually say to them, this is how you properly do it, I think they start to stress out a bit. Whereas if you put it into a game kind of scenario.
We, with the school, we play med ball volleyball a lot. And every week they come in and it's like, sir, we're playing med ball volleyball. And you give them med ball work down against the wall and it's not fun for them. As soon as you're throwing a ball as hard as you can at your mate or throw it as high into the air as you can, it's this mad exciting game. You do exactly the same thing against the wall. They hate it.
Yeah, it's funny.
Put it into a game, they love it. The other one I do a lot of is as soon as you start to put certain personalities against each other. So if you've got the big guys that are really into the sport and you say, right, we're doing a relay race and you're doing the Prola sprints. Again, Prola sprint by itself, they hate it. You're racing against your mate. They love it. They
any kind of competitiveness, they're all for it, aren't they?
Another thing I like to eat, they love to try and, please the teacher. They try and get on with the teacher. So if you ask them to do anything, they're quickly to do it. So anything like that really gets them on board. Yeah. So keeping it fun, keeping it interesting, keeping good variation. And like I said, general recommendations of not going crazy volume, keeping a good focus on good technique and good movement, not pushing things too hard is what we would recommend. So there you go. The sooner the better.
Oh yeah.
The sign off.
As soon as they're out of the womb. Yeah.
There's the sign off from Max. So that's what age is a good age to start training. I guess the next one, because we talked about variation, is how often should we change your program up, and then also how often should we deload. So I'm going to start with the deload one actually. So first of all, I think with this one, a lot of people talk about, I have a block and it takes me 4 weeks until I get to my best performance and then it drops off. And I think that rigid thinking doesn't actually work. I think if you're doing the same program all the time, you might realize these patterns that come out and saying after 4 or 5 weeks, I noticed that like I hit my peak performance and then the next week's pretty trash. I feel pretty tired. But I think there's different ways that you can approach that. So if you had a 4-week block and then you had a holiday in 5 weeks time, you're not going to deload on the 5th week and go on holiday. You're going to push for an extra week. And then you could still get that same result on week 5 that you got on week 4 if you just delayed how intensely you progress things over that block.
Yeah.
So instead of doing like an aggressive 4-week block where you go from doing, like in Barber Club, we do a triplet, 6 RP, 7 RP, 8 RP, 9 RP. That's a super linear, very simple progression.
Yeah.
If you want to do it over 5 weeks, you might go 6, 7, 7.5, 8, 9. It's just a simple delay in how intensely you're pushing things. So in terms of how often you deload, that comes down really to I guess the length of block that you want to do. So if you want to make them slightly longer and you prefer doing that slow build up, you can do. If you prefer an aggressive build up and then deload it more frequently, you can do. I also think for a lot of people that are just general populations, they shouldn't be deloading at all because life will deload you anyway, where you'll have a week where you can only make the gym once and that will naturally be your deload. You don't need to then do a deload week the week after because you've just not trained for a week.
Yeah, I think it's very rare. It's very rare, isn't it? You'll find someone who is absolutely into their training for the whole year throughout. So it's always good that deloads come very naturally, just because say they know that they're going to have a hard week at work or something, that will naturally be more of a deload for them, won't it? Rather than program it in it perfectly.
Yeah.
And as you say, like it becomes kind of like a placebo effect. If you say that someone knows that every 4 weeks they're going to plateau a little bit, they'll probably start mentally putting themselves in that position as it comes to it. So I think if you can maybe get over that placebo kind of effect and actually get over it, you'll learn that you're probably not gonna plateau as soon as you think.
I think there are ways to word that as well, like we said about the kids, like wording and explaining that. So when people are doing 4 weeks and then you're trying to say, look, like especially like for powerlifting, you have a competition, it doesn't always line up perfectly with the 4-week blocks. You have to change the timeline and say, look, this block's going to be a 5th week block. It just means we need to like add an introduction week, or we need to have an easy week before we then go for your normal 4-week block, or we're going to do that same 4-week block, but we're just going to make the jumps week on week less aggressive, and then you can line it up perfectly. But then I think it just comes down to the different personalities, because I know people that hate lifting light, they hate doing that, so they'd rather do the big aggressive push, deload, and then go again. And other people hate deloading, and then they want to delay that a little bit longer, and then it comes from there. I guess the caveats are like certain people might find if they're pushing for that longer without a deload that little niggly injuries come up and little aches and pains. So take that into account if you find that if you're working hard because even if you're doing less aggressive build-ups, if you're doing like hard 4 weeks of training, it can start to cause these general muscular aches, which aren't nothing serious, but that's where you're managing your workload. And that's when you would then deload.
And on the contrary, it's, as you say, it's all about the person. So some people absolutely love training, so when they deload, keep them in the gym and obviously just reduce the volume that loads. But some people can use that deload like, I actually really want this deload, and they'll actually use that as their kind of like treat in a way. So they'll build up to their top week and then they'll use that deload to absolutely do nothing because they've earned it, a kind of thing.
I think so. I've never given anyone zero training, but if they've got like a deload week, and like you said, like it's like, fantastic, they get a mental break from the gym. You maybe say to them like, don't worry about like filling in your program, kind of hit like the minimum dose, do it as fast as you can and get out the gym. Because if you're doing like an hour and a half, 2-hour sessions 4 times a week, that deload, like you said, the chance just to get it in an hour, done, get out of the gym and enjoy a bit more time out of life. So, and I've got other people on the flip that hate it, and they want to train, like you said, all the time. And then you can just change how much you actually deload. So like, it might be like, I don't know, the squatting and deadlifting, they're quite taxable exercises. You might deload that ever so slightly, but keep the accessory work, which isn't going to cause as much stress. You might keep that a little bit higher.
It's all based on the individual, isn't it? Because as you say, those are very taxing on the body. And then the other stuff, people often enjoy those if they want to get a little bit of a pump on in that kind of stuff.
No one ever deloads the biceps.
No, it's weird, isn't it?
Crazy.
We're going to deload your biceps and try. What?
Just the arms. We're going to keep doing squats and deadlifts. We're going to use off the arms. In terms of like when you work with teams, how often are you giving people deloads, or is it like, how do you manage it in season?
In season, it's all about sort of maintaining a kind of thing. You don't often get a lot of time for a deload because you always want to keep them firing.
You got to gain the week after.
You always want to keep them firing. So it's always towards that back end of the season, which is the best time to do it. And then you're preparing them in for pre-season.
What about like pre-season? Do you program easier weeks in there, or do you kind of just have a bit more of a moderate build-up?
Moderate build-up kind of thing. Because even pre-season, you don't have too long until you're back into games.
Yeah,
so
sure.
it's very
got
hard.
How many weeks you get? Like 8 weeks?
Yeah, something like that.
If you have 8 weeks and you deload in the middle of it, you've just lost 1/8 of your workload.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
You've waited all year and then you put 1/8 of it out.
Yeah,
for deloads.
Yeah, completely.
Okay, so I guess like what we're saying there is that like you can work out on your timeline how much training you've got relative to the life and your other things, other commitments that you've got outside of the gym, and you can work out how aggressively then to build things up.
Yeah.
So in the Barbell Club, we do 4-week blocks, similar to what we said earlier about the team environment versus the individual. We have to go off the averages. So I think for the average person that's training fairly hard, hasn't got life that will deload them naturally, isn't playing a team sport, typically is around that kind of 4th to 5th week, and then they start to notice little aches and pains, maybe a performance drop. So we keep it to the 4-week, quite aggressive build up. We take a bit of a deload on the first week, and then we build back up again, kind of that step method. But like we said, if your general populations, I think we both agree that deloading frequent is probably unnecessary, and life will do it naturally anyway.
Yeah,
by missing sessions and having life commitments where you're not training as much as you maybe would want to.
Yeah.
So cool. On that note, how often do you think people should be changing their program up in terms of, like, let's say exercises, different rep schemes, etc.?
I think as with regards to exercises, obviously simple is always better. But then, as we said with the other question, it's all dependent on the person, because if someone loses interest very quickly in a very simple program, they're not going to be coming to the gym as much. So it's always basing it a lot around the person. If they want to be as interested in the gym because they like loads of variation, you've got to probably change it up a little bit more compared to a different person.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that, because strength training by definition is quite repetitive and it's quite monotonous, and it's doing the fundamentals over and over again really well. And if you're into that and you like that kind of continuality, you're going to be very well suited to strength training, and you're going to stick it out. If you really don't like that and you like that variation, it's just probably not going to be for you. And you can do as much as you can with that variation, but like you said, variation for the sake of variation is probably a bad thing to do. But that said, like, if it's going to help keep you engaged in the gym, then it's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
The problem comes, I guess, is if you're trying to think of some like Mickey Mouse exercises to give people, so like, right, they've done squat, they've done this, like I've run out of exercises. All of a sudden they're standing on the bed, upside down on a ball.
Yeah.
I don't know, doing a plate. Yeah, pressing a plate of red through the legs while standing in a handstand position. And you're like, it's going to take me how much right after? We haven't got the ball. That's the only the only stumbling block. But if you're spending 4 weeks trying to learn how to do that, and then you do 1 or 2 weeks of it, then you change it again, you've missed out on 4 weeks of training. So I think it's important to change things up as needed from a mental perspective, but you don't want to be doing it for the sake of it. And you want to make sure that you're training hard rather than just learning new exercises every week.
Yeah. It is about it's convincing people that optimally, obviously, as you say, a very stable program is probably the best kind of thing. But then if they're not really getting convinced by that, because they're not going to get into the gym, that's when you start, okay, we'll try and change it up a little bit more. Whereas if they are fine with that and they know that motivation wise they will be in the gym, absolutely fantastic. So it's all based on the individual and their individual needs.
One thing I do quite like to do is like I've started with a couple of younger people, and they're very they do like the variation of it. So like they have the stuff that I think they absolutely should be doing. So like the fundamental movements that they want to get better at, and then stuff that's not like, if I'm not like they should absolutely be doing this exercise, I like to leave it open as like a movement archetype. So an example of what I think on the top of my head, I give him single leg of choice, and I say, look, sometimes you can do rear foot elevate split squat, sometimes just a normal split squat, sometimes dumbbell. He's still doing single leg every time, but that little bit of flexibility then keeps him a bit more engaged. He likes his biceps. He's an 18-year-old lad, so
perfect
bicep of choice. Add a couple more sets, go crazy, but you need to be doing squat, you need to be doing the bench press, because these are the exercises you want to get better at. But bicep, I'm not concerned if your dumbbell hammer curl is going up every single week. I'm more concerned that you're just getting a decent amount of work in and enjoying it. So
I don't suppose he chooses Bulgarians very much, does he?
I have no idea. I've literally never asked. Maybe subbing the single leg. It's a single leg of choice. He's doing single-legged bicep curls.
That is true, actually. That could be an option.
So yeah, but I know other people that hate the change, and people that like that kind of rigid structure that hate the change in exercises. And they get nervous about trying to learn a new exercise. So on the flip to them, you would change absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
But then I think like with with the rep schemes and stuff, it's a diminished returns. I think every time you're doing the same rep scheme, every time you're getting a little less from it, and that's where the variation will come. So you're realistically always going to be doing some kind of squat, some kind of deadlift or hinge pattern, some kind of pressing pattern, but then you can change up that rep scheme just to add a little bit of novelty in there.
Yeah, exactly. And with regards to S&C, it's quite good with that, because if you are in a team environment and you're relating your S&C movements to a sport, you probably can be a bit more varied, because overall you only want to push, you only want to pull, you only want to use your legs, kind of a thing, and you only want to hinge. So you can vary it a little bit more, because you're not as fussed about the weights going up too much.
You're not like, this guy needs to be squatting an extra 20% to get better at rugby. You think he needs to be strong in his legs.
Yeah.
So let's give him a bit more.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. So I think we're some good things to take away from there is don't change for the sake of it. You get diminished returns from the rep scheme, so maybe just the rep schemes every end of a block, so every like 4 to 6 weeks, but just don't do it for the sake of it. And if you don't specifically need to do an exercise, you can add the variation in there if that's going to help you stay more engaged in the session. So as much or as little as needed for you to keep motivated within the gym would be a recommendation. Fantastic. Right, next one then is opinion on the Olympic lifts for sports.
Okay, brilliant. Bit of me, this. So with regards to Olympic lifting, I think people often think that, I need to be doing cleans and because it's the best thing for power with regards to sport. But there's a couple of factors that come into it on whether you actually should be doing it in sports. So obviously they are a brilliant tool with regards to getting his triple extension, very powerful. So it replicates into sports where you're sprinting, jumping, getting through a tackle in rugby, something like that. But it all comes to, one, it's a very skillful movement. So it's whether you've got time to actually learn it. Because if you're spending, as you say, 4 or 5 weeks even learning it, you've missed out on 4 or 5 weeks of actually generating a lot of power by doing something else. So that's number one. And number two, there is actually a lot of other movements that are probably just going to be better. So in terms of skill wise, anytime you're going to do like a med ball slam or a throw or something like that, you're still doing the same thing by generating a lot of power through that. But skill wise, you don't actually have to think about as much when you do a clean. So they're the kind of factors that come into it. Like if someone's got time to learn it, or if they can already do it, absolutely brilliant. You can load it up and you can get through that triple extension. But if not, you stick to simpler movements, because all you want to do is generate a lot of power so it can replicate then onto the pitch.
So let's say someone can do the ollie lift, they're quite skilled with it. Would you do like a full clean? Obviously, would you go for a power clean? Would you go for just a high pull? So you're getting that extension without the catch?
It's all, as you say, it's all based on their skill level. So I'd probably never get into a full clean. I'd always go power stuff, because that's where you're going to generate that amount of power. Because some people's technique might mean they can get under the bar a little bit better, and it's less power, more how quickly you can get under the bar.
It's more the skill of lifting rather than actual generating force.
Yeah, whereas if they can catch it very nicely, but can't get under it well, power clean definitely. But if they're not as confident in that catch, because mobility wise, especially in rugby, some people can't get their elbows past there. It might just be a high pull, because they're still going through that main part of the movement.
Yeah.
But they don't have to worry about their flexibility when they're getting their elbows through the bar kind of thing.
I think that pretty much hits the nail on the head. What would you say would be like a good alternative for someone that can't quite do a power clean?
I think any kind of jump, because I always say when I teach Olympic lifting, that part where you're actually making contact with your hips and you're getting the bar moving vertically and you're going into this triple extension, it's basically just a jump really. So anytime you're doing a box jump or weighted box jump or anything like that, it's probably the best way to simulate that. And then you get your power stuff in loads of other ways, as I say, with med ball slams, that kind of stuff.
I really like a trap bar jump, because people still want to get that weight through. So like rather than doing like a goblet squat, it can be nicer to trap bar jump. But anything like I said, that's getting that extension pattern with a bit of load on it is going to be a good alternative.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, fantastic. I think that was nice and quick. Anything else to add, or are you happy?
More than happy.
Fantastic. The last one then is why do we give some people the safety bar squat over back squat? So I guess they're asking, what are the advantages of the safety bar over the back squat? Why do we give certain people it? Do you want to kick it off?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's based on, if someone needs to learn something, the pattern obviously from scratch, getting a bar on your back, it's not the way to go. You want to simplify everything so they can get through the good movement patterns of the squat. Squat, obviously going through your midfoot and all of that. So when you're actually going through a safety bar squat or a goblet squat or something like that, you're actually getting that weight through the right part of your body, and you're getting obviously your elbows under the bar, all that kind of stuff. And then it will then slowly replicate into getting that bar on your back. So it's always starting simple so they can get the movement right. And then once their patterns are good, you can obviously start progressing into that normal back squat. So it's all based on the individual and their skill level at that point, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, even if like you can do a good back squat, a safety bar is a great alternative or a great option for your lower body training. So like you said, it's for some people they put a bar in the back and they're just hitting a really good position straight away. For a lot of people, like Max said about the midfoot, they're struggling to stay on their midfoot. They're struggling. The main thing I think is keeping that stacked position. As soon as you put a bar in the back, they're finding themselves super extended, like this chest high, anterior tilt, so the lower back's really arched, and then trying to do a squat and they're getting into like bad positions with the pelvis and they're finding that they're getting back pain. With the safety bar, because the hands are forward, it's a little bit easier to get that position stacked with the ribs over the pelvis, which we know is the best position to be in. And doing that at the same time, getting over the midfoot, you're ready to go then and you're ready to start your squat. It's a lot easier to maintain that position.
Yeah, and I think it's always, as we say, reinforcing back to the like teaching people from a young age, it's always you need to get the movement patterns in first. It's always a lot of people go into the gym and they think, right, I need to get a bar on my back, I need to get weight on, I need to start going heavy, when that's not the best thing to do at all. If you can learn the movement well first and then you've mastered that and then you can slowly add weight on, you're going to get so much more benefit out of that, and your body will thank you so much more in the long run if you've done it that way, rather than chucking weight on your back and then just diving straight into the deep end. If you can break it all down from the start and be patient with it and not think that you've got to rush through everything, you're gonna get so much more out of it.
Big time. And like you said earlier, you don't have to do, like you said in the rugby in season, you're not specifically concerned about someone getting really good at squatting. If you don't want to be the best squat in the world, if you don't want to powerlift, the SSB could be a better exercise because you're a little bit more upright, a little bit more knee flexion. You can bias the position with the handles to find something that's comfortable for yourself, easier to get stacked. And when you're looking for like the squat knee dominant pattern, most people are going to achieve a better position with the SSB and be a bit more upright compared to the back squat, which can be a little bit hingier, which then puts a little bit more loading through the lower back. So if you're trying to distinguish between these movements of squatty squats, which we like to say, which is upright squats, lots of knee flexion, the SSB is going to be easy to achieve that position. In the same way that like we like an RDL over a normal deadlift for people to get that full range through the hips. We like a trap bar. You don't have to be doing these specific exercises. And for some people, they want to get better at back squat. But the fundamentals are a lot easier to get dialed in with the SSB.
Yeah.
Do you like it for yourself? Obviously, you can back squat. Do you like the SSB?
I've used it a little bit. I always just prefer using a bar. Like I do.
You like a front squat, didn't you?
Yeah, I do. I do like a good front squat just because it replicates my Olympic lifts, because that's the position that I'm most comfortable in. I haven't actually really back squatted. I have because I've been injured recently, but before that I was mainly doing just front squats just because I only really get into that position with my Olympic lifts. It's always good to load up on your back squat because you're naturally a little bit heavier, so you're going to get more load on. But I just like getting comfortable in that position, because a lot of things that people ask me is that, how do you get comfortable being in that front rack position? And it's just do lots of it. It's just repetition, just getting comfortable in being uncomfortable kind of thing. So yeah, I do like a good front squat over a back squat actually.
Yes. Let's agree to disagree. What would be if you were, like you said about this like natural progression over time of exercises, what do you think is like a good progressive system for learning a squat if you've never squatted before?
If you've never squatted before, well, as you say, it's always good to get the pattern right. So start with no weight, just get through the pattern, then go into maybe a little bit of a goblet squat to get kettlebell on you. Then, as you say, go into a safety bar squat kind of thing, because then you're getting through the good patterns as well, but without worrying about that bar being on your back. And then you can slowly progress into getting that bar on your back. I think that's a good natural
I agree.
curve upwards.
I'd probably took the belt squat in there as well.
Yeah,
obviously not everyone's got a belt squat, but when you're going from a goblet to an SSB, like the belt squat's a great way to just get your legs ready to actually handle some load, because the jump from the 16 kilo kettlebell to the 50 kilo SSB or whatever you're doing can be quite big, but adding a belt squat in the middle, I think that's just a good progressive system.
Yeah, of course, if you've got that, definitely.
And then once you're there, like you've said, there's these exercises that are better suited to certain things. So I think for a back squat, even if you can back squat really well, when you're doing it for high reps, you're just going to be more prone to technique breakdown. And before you know it, again, even if you're getting well braced and stacked, before you know it, you're back in that extended position after doing a few reps.
Yeah.
If you want to do high rep stuff, maybe you'd be better off doing a safety bar squat or a belt squat, which is probably better for hypertrophy.
Yeah.
And using the back squat for like your lower rep sets where there's going to be less prone for technique breakdown.
Yeah. Completely agree.
So
completely agree.
Fantastic. Yeah, guys, I think that's our Q&A done.
Brilliant.
So hopefully you've all had something to take away from then. You've got some good points and have learned a thing or two, if not about exercise science, at least about Max.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
And Max, you'll be working tomorrow for the Metcon and then moving forward on the full time.
Yeah, full time from now.
So fantastic, guys. So yeah, if you see me in the gym, please go and say hello, introduce yourself, and make you feel welcome at part of the MSC family. And until next time, we will speak to you all soon.
Yeah, see you later, guys.